You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
What a wild snowy day in Chicago.
Can we talk about this weather for a second?
It's beautiful.
It's very blustery.
Yeah, I feel like it's so quiet out there though. So hopefully we won't have too much outside noise this episode. It's like a sound blanket over the city.
I had to walk Neptune for his afternoon poop walk in the mists of the storm. It was very quiet out on the roads, but like I said, very blustery. I wore my balaclava. It was perfect. As made by Grace's girlfriend, who's amazing. But yeah, it was like my glasses were fogged. He was running. Everything underneath the snow was ice. It was a lot of fun out there.
I had to wear my glasses this morning with my mask. Long story, but it's horrible. How do you even? I felt like I was in a dream. You know, when you can't see quite clearly.
It's actually really, really hard, and you have to have a very specific mask, and it has to be very tight around the nose specifically and under the eyes.
Yeah. That's what I've heard, but I didn't. I just had a regular run-of-the-mill mask made for everyone.
She's obviously never been in my shoes. That's all I have to say.
I wear contacts. TYVM. I'm just like everyone else. I put in my contacts one eye at a time.
You should get you should get something where you can put them in at the same time.
I've definitely taken them out at the same time. I'm quick, baby. Do something twice a day, every day. Well, I only take them out once a day. But do something like that for, since 7th grade. You get pretty quick at it. I guess
that makes sense. I recently got contacts just because, I need them for sport activities, which trust me, I don't ever do sport activities.
For her baseball team, her club baseball team she joined.
Exactly. Co-ed club, recreational baseball. Anyway, I got to give myself at least 15 minutes an eye. That's not a joke.
No, I believe that. When I was first learning how to put in contacts, I would wake up early and go to the half bath off the kitchen. And work on putting in my contacts.
And fumble through it. I know. And then my eyes are watering and I'm standing there blinking, trying to get them to adjust the right way. And I have very my contacts, it took a long time to get to the contacts that I have now. They're not perfect because of my astigmatism. It's a whole thing. So, anyways, and when I put the contacts in, as I put the contacts in, the world becomes much closer. Does that happen for you?
I feel like when I wear my glasses, the world is further away and I can't see as well. So, but I think that's how the world is actually with contacts. It's not closer. Oh. That's the true distance.
That's the true distance.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
right.
what the real world is like. Anyways, I'm like, what are we even
We're recording. We are.
You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword, the podcast about glasses and snowstorms. I'm Grace Topinka.
And I'm Chelsea Rowan. After your weekly weather updates, we do move into your favorite weekly Podword Crosscast, of course, where we talk about the week's crosswords and other stuff, I guess. There's other stuff here.
We do a recap of the weather. So it's not a weather forecast. It's just if you wanted to know what the weather was like in Chicago a couple days ago, we got you covered.
Speaking of the weather, I don't mean to keep us off track here, but...
Doubtful.
Do you ever watch TV shows where, it's about, a specific profession, and then suddenly you're, wistful to be in that profession? I just started a TV show about meteorologists, and I'm sitting on the couch I could be a meteorologist. I could do that. I'd be really good at that. And it's I actually probably would really hate it, but that's movie magic, baby. That's
I know,
the
you
whole
felt
point.
that way about doctors. Well, that kind of reminds me of the CSI topic that I did, where it's all these people saw CSI as being sexy and cool, and then it's not that way at all.
Yeah.
You're just in a lab all day.
I did go for a couple months
supermodels,
thinking that I was meant to be a surgeon. Someone who I'm squeamish. I literally will pass out when I see blood. So,
and you got a steady hand?
No, not at all.
I've never known that about you. You could have a steady hand. I wouldn't know.
I'm quite clumsy. I just tried to paint polymer clay for the first time since the 2nd grade. It's a mess. It's a mess in here. Anyway.
Let's get into our Poll-a-palooza from last week.
Yes. We had a good one this week.
Yes, although I'm not really sure how to interpret this data. We polled our Twitter followers, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. And you could choose between a rock, a paper, or scissors. And 67% of people chose paper.
Ooh.
20% chose scissors and 13% chose rock. Now, I don't know what to do with that data. Like, I can't tell you who won because it doesn't make sense that way.
No, I feel like, should we send this data to Tokyo where they're doing all of those research study things and be like, hey, just so you know. I think what this does is tells us the likelihood of like our followers playing a certain first move.
True,
right?
But did people listen to us and that's why they did paper? Because we said that's like the best one to start with because most people would choose rock, but according to this poll, the least amount of people chose rock. But I don't know if they necessarily listened to the episode or not.
And remember last time we talked about how rock was an amateur move, especially for men. So does this mean we have more of like professional rock, paper, scissors players on our hands, not men?
That's possible. There's no way to know who voted.
There's literally no way to know. Not that we know anyway. I picked paper. Not gonna lie.
I picked paper as well.
Ooh.
So
what can you do?
There you go. We are predictable.
We are, and that is the poll for this week. Thank you, Grace, for yet again rock, paper, scissoring.
Poll magic.
Poll magic.
Okay. Shall we move along to our
moving into
heights and shites?
The heights and shites. I'm going to start with the shite.
Okay.
Tell me if this is a legitimate shite, if I'm justified in feeling this. It comes from the Friday, February 11th New Yorker by Patrick Berry. 24 down. Creamy green bowl full, served with chips.
Guacamole?
You would think.
Uh-huh.
It is avocado dip.
Oh.
Is avocado dip a thing?
I feel like
or is it just guacamole?
I don't know what would differentiate the two. Maybe I really don't know.
So I Googled avocado dip recipes, and they were all guacamole recipes on white people blogs, and they said avocado dip. And I'm like, is that like people trying not to like culturally appropriate or something, or like bastardize like a cultural recipe? Like what's going on here? Are we so liberal that we're conservative now? Like that, like the horseshoe effect?
It is kind of it's a circle at some point.
So I was just like,
I think avocado dip probably fit in the
grid.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think that's a relatively allowed shit. Speaking of like more woke shites. Well, sorry. Continue if you have more.
No, go. Oh, I do, but what do you have? We can stay on ships.
No, you go.
Okay. So I do actually have two from that puzzle that were interesting, that I liked. 34 across, short, sharp saxophone sounds, and the answer was toots. I just liked that was the clue that they used to get toots in the puzzle. Mm-hmm. Very much enjoyed that. And then I learned something. I feel like I was probably the last human on Earth to learn this. You let me know. 55 across, board game that involves building a Rube Goldberg machine. The answer is Mousetrap. So I had to look up what a Rube, R-U-B-E Goldberg machine was.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt was like, oh, it's a overly complicated machine that does a relatively simple task or sometimes doesn't do anything at all. Like, for instance, Mousetrap, like this really extensive and like complicated thing just to like trap a mouse, exactly. And from what I looked into, it is named after a comic book, or like a comic artist from newspapers, I think, who had his characters using these kind of like overly complicated machines to do seemingly simple tasks. And so now it is called a Rube Goldberg machine. And I was like, okay. Also, I don't think I ever played Mousetrap from start to finish.
No, we never played it. We just always put it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you told me what the point of Mousetrap was, I'm assuming it's to trap a mouse, but I think
it's like as you keep going, you get more and more things to build.
Ah, okay.
I believe. I have heard that before, but I needed a reminder.
There you go.
Of what it was.
What do you got?
I did the February 13th Washington Post by Evan Bernholz, and I did have some hits, but this was kind of a shite. So I just want to get 9 down was culture vultures love. And the answer was arts. I know a culture vulture as like someone who appropriates Black culture, like the Kardashians.
Right. That's my understanding.
So, I mean, I assume it has a different meaning too. But I was like, wait,
what do you
think
they mean? What do you think he means? So the answer was arts, ARTS?
Yeah. So it's someone who like likes culture. You know.
Oh.
Like a Renaissance.
What is the clue again?
Man. Culture, vultures, love.
Arts. Oh, yeah, no. My interpretation of that is that a culture vulture is like consuming as much art as possible because they love it.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to our understanding of that phrase being like the Kardashians who appropriate culture for their personal gain.
Yeah.
For instance. If we're misunderstanding, let us know.
I mean, I'm sure it also means that it probably originally started like had that other meaning and then it's been changed.
Okay.
But I do have some hits from that puzzle. 113 across, tricky word, ? And it's ta-da. 127, down under vehicle, ? Sub.
Oh yes, I did this puzzle. I'm remembering now.
102 across, make out, ? Tag. That one took me a little bit.
It's good.
93 across, makeup of some big fingers. I was like, what the heck is this? And it's foam.
Foam fingers.
Yes.
Very cute.
Shout out to 85 down, member of many an LGBT couple, femme.
I liked that too. Very nice.
And then, oh, no, so that was it for that puzzle.
Okay. I'll move us into the Friday, February 11th, New York Times by Trenton Charlson. I say it all the time, but I love the puzzles where they have like the full 15 across spanners because I'm really interested to see what constructors come up with to have like interesting phrases or interesting like trivia that has like these long spanners across the puzzle, across the grid. And Trenton did well. For instance, one across the opener, words to a skeptic, and the answer was ye of little faith. That was nice.
Yes.
And then and then 17 across, subject of the so-called surgeon's photograph of 1934. Does that sound familiar to you? Because it rung such a bell in my head.
Is that Loch Ness Monster?
Yes.
Amazing.
And the answer was Loch Ness Monster. It rung such a bell in my head, and I was like, I know this. We did a topic on this. Something about this. And then we filled it in. I was like, I'm an idiot. I should have known. If you're interested in listening to the Loch Ness Monster topic, that's episode 56, Blue-Eyed Monster. We quote that one a lot because, for obvious reasons, it's a good one.
Comes up a lot.
It does. Go ahead.
Did you do the New Yorker February 16th by Patrick Barry?
I did.
I love 21 Across, Disney Channel show of the 2000s about a teen with psychic abilities. That's so Raven. I was hoping that was going to be like a theme and there were going to be other 2000s shows, but sadly there wasn't. But still.
New Yorker never does themes, sadly, but.
Then I should have known.
But okay, Raven's best friend's name was Chelsea in the show. And that was, it gave me a superiority complex.
And
let's
she
just put
had
it that way.
red hair too.
And she had red hair, so
could be you.
Do with that what you. And she was really weird, so I really identified with her.
That's fair. 5 down, boastful weaver of Greek myth, Arachne. I knew that from when my topic on the Spider-Man musical,
which is episode 116. Okay,
which is more about Arachne than Spider-Man for some reason.
I put that on my hits too because I was like, I know this answer because of episode 116 where Grace talks about the Spider-Man Broadway flop. And I was like, this is so random how words collide. And I feel like these little hits and shits that we're doing with you and our topics, like the reason we're doing this whole podcast is so that when you're doing crosswords, you have these same aha moments that we're having. Like Grace was able to answer this and I was able to answer this specific one because she talked about it in like her Broadway flop episode or the surgeon's photograph. We talked about it in the Loch Ness Monster episode. I love when our topics reappear in the crosswords and you're just like, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. I'm so smart. I'm so smart.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I actually retained some information. 28 across, the L Word character, Blank McCutcheon. I never even watched the L Word, but I knew it was Shane.
I have never seen the L Word. I did not know that was Shane. I feel like I should watch it at some point. People say it's not good, but
I feel like it's kind of outdated.
Yeah.
No. It's 43 across, item of headgear superstitiously worn inside out. It's a rally cap, and I looked it up, and it's like a baseball. In baseball, they'll put the hat on inside out, and it's like a thing you do for good luck. I think they do a bunch of weird stuff for good luck. I've seen like YouTube compilations of it.
Same with like hockey. Hockey players won't shave their face until they lose or something, or like they won't wash their jerseys until they lose. I don't know.
Yeah, and then they tell us astrology is fake.
That's I cannot with these people. Are you finished with that puzzle?
No.
Okay, go ahead. I have one from this puzzle I want to talk about.
Okay, because I have 2 shites.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
Shockingly. 33 down, softy. And the answer is pussycat.
I didn't like this either.
I just don't like that. I don't know. Is that a softy? I don't know.
A pussycat to me sounds, it's kind of like minxy. Yeah, minx, yeah.
And then 38 down, sent to the canvas. It's KO'd, which we see a lot, but they like actually spelled it out. KAYOED, which normally we just see KOD. Yes. So that threw me off.
I agree. We did not like that one.
Weird to see it spelled out like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
The one that I have from this puzzle is 47 across. Thousand Island dressing ingredient for short, and the answer was mayo. And so then Matt and I were like, what even is Thousand Island dressing made out of? And because I haven't done a food topic in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured there's not enough here for me to do a full topic. So I just wanted to do like a very short informational for anybody who's interested in Thousand Island dressing, because I thought this was actually kind of interesting. So first of all, Thousand Island dressing the base is mayonnaise, mayo, as the clue suggests, but it can also include olive oil, lemon juice, orange juice, paprika, Worcestershire sauce, mustard vinegar, cream, chili sauce, tomato puree, ketchup, and Tabasco sauce. You might also find it with like little chunks of pickles, onions, bell peppers, green olives, hard-boiled egg, parsley, pimento, chives, garlic, or nuts like walnuts. And I was like, well, where the hell does this come from? Why is it called Thousand Island dressing? Well, apparently there's an area between the U.S. and Canada called Thousand Islands, and it's like right on the King Charles River, and it's said to have originated there, and like people who vacationed there, like rich people that vacationed there, brought back with them to like New York and Boston, and then restaurants in those areas started to serve it. And I'm like, it's so interesting to me how food travels like that. Like it was, used from fishermen's wives would make them like salads with this dressing, and then rich people came and stayed there and vacationed there, picked it up and brought it back to New York. And I'm like,
interesting. That's my mom's. Well, it was when I was little. She would always get that at restaurants.
I think the thing that I like Thousand Island dressing to a point, on certain things, but when I saw that it might have orange juice in it, I was kind of like, wait a second, I don't know.
Hold on a minute.
What else you got?
The February 14th New Yorker by Cameron Austin Collins had a couple that I liked. 4 down, Acrobat Launcher was Adobe.
That was good.
17 across, Mythical Diamond Overlords was the baseball gods. That was a nice, completely across answer. Yes. Was fun.
It reminded me of Legs Diamond.
Yes.
Which you'd have to listen to some of our earlier episodes to be in on that joke, folks, okay?
18 down, new crowns force them to vacate their positions. Baby teeth.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Another all the way across clue or answer was 43 across, scuttlebutt. Word on the street.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got for that one.
From that puzzle, I also liked 48 across, head branch, question mark. The answer was antler.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Very cool. And then I loved this one, 8 down, rock style with a Czech sound to it, question mark, Czech like Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was Prague, Prog, not Prague, like the capital of Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what like prog rock is, it's like it's short for progressive rock.
I didn't know, but now I do.
And some progressive rock bands that you probably are familiar with. It's like Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, Rush. And they're known for essentially like being really experimental and, quote, progressive with the musicality of their work. That's all I got for prog rock, but I was like, oh, this is cute. Prog rock, check. Anyway, that's all I got. That's all the hits and all the shits that I got. We actually had some shits today. We haven't had shits in a long time.
I know. Well, I don't like to,
we try not to
hypercritical of people. And our shits are just like, none questions. That serious. So
seriously.
If you're listening to this and we say one of the things is a shit, don't worry about it. Shall we flip the coin?
Let's flip the coin before I continue. Okay, let's see. I'm flipping the coin now. It's tails.
Me? Little me?
Little old Grace.
My topic comes from the February 14th New Yorker by Cameron Austin Collins, and it is 7 down erstwhile suburban hotspots. What? Is that your topic?
It's my topic. Okay, I spent most of today telling Matt, I think Grace probably is going to do this topic. I think Grace is probably going to do this topic. And then he finally texted you, I think, to ask you what the topic was. But he is so poker-faced and so straight. I was like, did she tell you? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what is it? He's like, I don't know. And he, like, you would never be able to tell.
Well, I wonder if we read the same articles. I'm guessing. Did you read the Atlantic article?
Of course, I read the Atlantic article.
All right. Listeners,
all right, give us some seconds.
Sorry, this is going to be a kind of a hot mess, I think, but we'll
get back to you.
Yeah. All right, we're back, folks, after a couple minutes of trying to talk about how we're going to do this. So
it's always tricky when we do the same topic, if only because for a topic like this, all of the sources that we both used, are so good. Like, how could you not use them? And how could you not find them, But luckily for you listeners, Grace and I, even though we're doing the same topic, have different interests within those topics. So we'll hopefully have a nice,
well-rounded. You'll learn more about malls than you ever cared to know, whether you like it or not. Should we just name some of the articles off the bat?
Yes, let's do it.
So most of my stuff comes from an article in The Atlantic called When Malls Save the Suburbs from Despair by Ian Bogost, and the New Yorker article, The Terrazzo Jungle by Malcolm Gladwell. And Chelsea also used those as well, but
Correct. I also used The State of the American Mall on New York Times by Shapna Mashawari. Why the Death of Malls is More Than Shopping is about more than shopping on Time by Joseph Sanborn. And then The Rise and Fall of the American Mall on Business Insider by Josh Harmon and Exazim. I also got some information from Dead Malls, a comprehensive guide to abandoned malls in 2021 on killer Urbex. And then A Haunting Look Inside America's Creepiest Abandoned Malls, where a Huffington Post photojournalist, Seph Lawless, documented some of the creepiest / coolest, quote, dead malls in the country. So yeah, that's where we're at. And we got a little outline going, but we're going to see how it goes.
So do you want to start about talking about malls?
Oh, yes.
In general? Like, we're going to be focused mostly on shopping malls in the US because that's what the clue was about.
Yes, mostly like your typical stereotype, like archetyped American mall. Like when you sit and you close your eyes, exactly, and you think of a mall, your hometown mall or the mall closest to where you grew up, that's what we're talking about. If you're from America, of course. So just to give us like a little bit of an opener, shopping centers, so places where you could shop, have been around for literally like all of time. You've got agoras in ancient Greece, bazaars in the Middle East, like shopping centers and markets, like literally throughout all of like, not all of human history, obviously not like cavemen, but you guys get what I'm saying.
I got it.
So the first ever like covered shopping center like in history is a place in Paris called Passage du Clair, or Caire, and it was established in 1798. And essentially, it was just a market outside, and it had a covering, which you might be like, oh, don't they all have covers? Not necessarily. Like, they could just be stalls or tents on the side of the road, etc. So the first legitimately established covered market was in Paris in 1798. And then the first shopping arcade built in the United States was in Providence, Rhode Island in 1828, and it's called the Arcade. And so now I want to talk a little bit about some terms you may hear while Grace and I are discussing shopping malls, just because they can be used interchangeably and it's helpful to understand what we're talking about. So a shopping mall is a term that's used predominantly in North America, and it applies to enclosed retail spaces. So all the shops are inside under a roof and there's walls all around it, okay? A shopping center, however, is usually an open air retail complex. And I'm not talking like a farmer's market. I'm talking about when you think of someone saying I'm going to go to the outlets, and you drive in and you park your car and they've got all these big kind of stores and you have to park your car and walk and go into the store, and all the stores are outside. That's a shopping center. And then you might also hear the term shopping arcade, and a shopping arcade is essentially covered on the top but open on the sides, and the word arcade comes from the idea of arches. So you have to go through these arches to get inside to where the shopping is. And you might see those in New England, or there's some places in the South that have shopping arcades that still exist today, like in Charleston, for instance. So those are some terms that you may hear us use throughout this, this topic.
This journey.
Yes. So there have always been places to shop. So why did shopping malls and shopping centers start popping up in the United States? Well, in the mid-20th century, with the rise of the suburb and automobile culture, a new style of shopping center, the outdoor shopping area, was created away from downtown. So think about urban shopping, walking down a city street, walking down the Mag Mile, or going into Saks on Fifth Avenue. People were no longer living in the cities exactly. So they were moving out to the suburbs, but there was nowhere to shop in the suburbs. And so they started creating centers, outdoor shopping retail centers, where people could still do their shopping without having to drive into the city or hop on the train to go into the city to do their shopping. So that's kind of what was going on. But we have a very particular person to thank for taking this idea of an outdoor shopping center and making it into something a little bit more familiar.
Mm-hmm.
What was his name?
His name? Victor Gruen.
Okay.
I'll take it from here. Well,
she's going to take
this one part.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, because I was going to start saying that when you think of a shopping mall, I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, but I kind of have a negative view of shopping malls. I'm it's very suburban, very capitalistic. It's just a place to spend money. Mm-hmm. But that's not, it kind of reminded me of your topic on Monopoly, because that's not how it started.
Right.
And Victor was a staunch socialist, and he's the guy that designed the indoor shopping mall. But let's learn more about him. So,
okay.
He was an Austrian architect. He was short, stout, and very eccentric, with a wild head of hair and bushy, spiky eyebrows. According to a profile in Fortune, he was, quote, a torrential talker with eyes as bright as mica and a mind as fast as Mercury. So I wish someone would describe me that way.
Honestly.
But he grew up in a middle-class Jewish family, and he studied architecture at the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, which a few years earlier had turned down a young Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Interestingly. He also did theater on the side, so he was a very creative guy. He escaped Austria in 1938 when one of his theater friends dressed up as a Nazi stormtrooper and drove Gruen and his wife to Zurich. They eventually made it to New York with an architect's degree, $8, and no English.
I loved that story.
Mm-hmm. So he got together with other German and Austrian refugees, and he formed the Refugee Artists Group. By 1939, the group was on Broadway, playing 11 weeks at the Music Box. So he was kind of doing that for a while. But
this whole story is so interesting.
It really is.
It's, yeah. And this information comes from the Malcolm Gladwell profile of Gruen on
The New Yorker.
The New Yorker. It was published in 2004, but the information is so good. I learned so much about malls and so much about Victor Gruen. We'll put it in the episode description. It's really good.
Worth a read. But one day he met up with an old friend from Vienna named Ludwig Lederer, who wanted to open a store on Fifth Avenue. And Gruen, he was an architect, he agreed to design it, but it was revolutionary because he added like a arcade, but just like the entryway. So like an open entry that included glass cases, faux marble, green glass on the ceiling, and it was like a customer trap because at the time, most storefronts were like right up on the sidewalk. But Gruen's design enticed customers to hang out, stay a while, come in, and of course, buy things. And it became known as the Gruen effect, and then a lot of people hired him to design their storefronts in New York.
Yes, there's actually a really cool article that I found about the Gruen effect that show a lot of his, famous storefronts and designs that he had throughout like this time period. And it's like that classic mid-century look. It's just so cool to look at what he did.
But then, like Chelsea said, in the 1950s, the American middle class, they had a lot of money and they started spending it, or they had more money than they ever had before. And they started spending it on housing and cars in the suburbs. But the suburbs were missing something. So Ray Oldenburg, a sociologist, said the communities need 3 spaces. One space is the home, the second space is the workplace, and the third space is where people go to exchange ideas, form relationships, and create communities, i.e. places to just hang out and be. But that didn't exist in suburbia, because suburbia was built for cars and homes and to be isolated.
Yes. I was talking about this a little bit with Matt. Something that I've been feeling ever since starting to do this particular topic was really having an appreciation, and by appreciation, not like necessarily I appreciate this, but, an understanding of the difference between urban and suburban life. And in a city, you have so much more access to like a varied life. And I don't necessarily mean that in like a positive or negative way, but like your life on the day-to-day in a city can be so astronomically different. Whereas like in the suburbs, it can be relatively the same. And I also feel like in the suburb that affords you more privilege to be individualistic, whereas in a city it definitely is more sometimes it feels more community based. Whereas like in the suburb, like sometimes the houses are so far apart from each other, you just drive to and from work every day, you never see your neighbors, you shop at the same grocery store but you don't know anybody that works there because the grocery store's 30 miles away from you, and so on and so forth. And it can be a more isolating experience, and then it kind of fosters like more of an individualism, which might be why malls were one of the reasons malls were so important, which Grace is about to get to, but just to say.
Well, it also reminds me, there's this guy on TikTok who does videos basically walking around. He like walks and rides his bike everywhere, and he walks around suburbia and points out how like a lot of suburbs are built just for cars and how sidewalks will just end in the middle of nowhere, or it would be like impossible for someone to, like walk to a bus stop from, another popular place, and how it's basically just made for cars, and how that can be depressing and isolating.
Yes.
If you've ever felt that way, like if you I think a lot of times happens with kids growing up in suburbs, you feel kind of like lost and isolated.
Yeah, and there's like lack of accessibility, really, when you get right down to it. When a place is just built for cars,
if you can't drive.
If you can't drive,
able to drive,
or if you can't walk.
Yeah. Okay, but enter Gruen again. So he had been successful designing storefronts in New York, and in 1954 he designed the first outdoor suburban shopping plaza near Detroit. But 2 years later, in 1956, he designed the Southdale Center in Edina, Minnesota. So Southdale was like unlike anything ever built before. While most mall-type things had outdoor-facing stores, Southdale was enclosed with storefronts on the inside. It had AC for the summer, heat for the winter. It had 2 big department stores at either end. And in order to keep it easily walkable, it had multi-stories connected by escalators. There were fountains, art installations, and a huge courtyard. And people loved it. Walt Disney even said that Gruen was his main influence for Epcot, which we talked about in another episode, where he kind of wanted to create this, like, community in a bubble that had everything. And Southdale is still open today, although it doesn't look like a historical building because it was so modern for its time, and it basically served as a prototype for every indoor mall built since. So it looks just like every indoor mall, but
it was the first.
The original.
Pictures of the original Southdale Mall are freaking cool. I can't wait to share them.
Yeah. 4 years later, there are over 4,500 large shopping complexes in the U.S., which average to 3 new shopping centers opening every day.
That's insane.
And Gruen was very proud of what he had built. So he wanted to bring the pedestrian experience of European cities to the US. He thought that by careful organization, he could fix suburbia, whose roads, he said, were, quote, avenues of horror flanked by the greatest collection of vulgarity ever collected by mankind. Billboards, motels, gas stations, shanties, car lots, miscellaneous industrial equipment, hot dog stands, wayside stores. I didn't know this, but in the middle of the 1800s, Vienna had demolished and rebuilt its city to better serve the community. It did a lot of different things. I'm not going to go too far into it, but one of these additions included the Ringstrasse, which was a grand mall that was built around the city with wide sidewalks and expansive urban views, and that greatly influenced Gruen's vision. So here's a quote from the Atlantic article. Quote, by creating places for community in the deserts of suburbia, he hoped to lure people from their cars and into contact with one another. The malls would be for shopping, yes, but also offer food, relaxation, and green space. He originally wanted malls to have residential and community spaces like medical offices and libraries. And
you can see why that influenced Disney.
Yes.
You know, you can see like Epcot a little bit in there as well. Or the idea of Epcot. Yeah.
This idea is similar to now the new urbanist movement, which that guy on TikTok is kind of all about, but it's pushing for more walkable, mixed-use, denser developments in cities and towns.
Yes.
So that people do have a space where they're not going to get hit by a car and they're able to be with the community and, you know, not just shopping, like not just going to, you know, Macy's and the Apple store, but have, you know, community shops, different services.
Exactly. And that's like kind of like the basis of socialism, honestly, which you can see how Gruen is influenced by that, like the idea of like forming community. So, you know, you can see all this stuff woven in to the intention behind the design. Another quote that I liked from the Atlantic article was this, quote, the mall is for shopping. It sounds idiotic to say, of course the mall is for shopping, but more specifically, it gives shopping a specific place. The mall separated commerce into its own private layer, and it did so just as commercialism was running rampant and out of control in the progress-fueled mid-century. Which leads me to the question, like, we have to understand why malls were so important and so successful for so long. You know, like, he builds the first mall in 56, and then you said by 60, we had over 4,500 like malls. Shopping complexes. Exactly. By 1975, malls and shopping centers accounted for 33% of all retail sales in America. That's insane. And then in 1986, Consumer Reports named the shopping mall alongside birth control, antibiotics, and the personal computer one of the top 50 wonders that revolutionized the lives of consumers. In the 6 decades since the first enclosed shopping mall was built in 56, up to 1,500 enclosed malls were erected across the country. And Malcolm Gladwell says in his New Yorker article, quote, Victor Gruen may well have been the most influential architect of the 20th century, end quote.
I believe it. Did you hang out at malls a lot growing up?
Yes. That was like the only thing to do.
Well, it was like one of the places where I could go when I was like in 8th grade with my friends without my parents and just like hang out for the night. And we wouldn't even like, sometimes we'd go to the movies, but mostly we would just walk around the mall, see our friend, like if other people were there, go into like Hot Topic and not buy anything, just like look around.
Eat at the food court if you could get money from your parents, you know.
Or just go get the free samples at the food court.
Exactly. And you'd also be able to meet people from different schools. That was a big thing for me too. Like I lived in a suburbia, small town. I went to the school with the same people my entire life. And then you go to the mall and it's in a different town, one town over. So now you get to like hang out and like meet people from different towns. And, you know, I loved that aspect of it. And the mall is also where like I discovered like more punk culture and punk fashion. So like I went and I was really into like rock and I would wear like the Killers t-shirt, but I was like such a nerd. It was like the Killers t-shirt with like jeans on. And then I saw people that had like green dyed hair and like homemade like skinny jeans and that they sewed with like floss and their hair was spiked. And I was like, a whole new world opened in front of me at the mall.
Yeah. And we had like the mall close by me was like the smaller one that you went to in middle school, but then the cooler mall was like a little further away, and then that was where like the older kids go, and it was bigger and it had more stuff.
Yes, the mall that I went to is like, you know, maybe like a 5-minute drive from my house, but like for special occasions, like I remember going to a bigger mall 45 minutes away for a friend's birthday. Like, because that was like, we're going to go to the other mall for my birthday, you know, like what? Or like on a Friday night, you just go to the mall and you hang out.
I wonder though, are teenagers not doing that now?
No, I don't think
obviously
they are.
COVID, like even before COVID though, I mean, things are changing.
Do we want to talk a little bit about why malls were so popular, you know, mid-century until the mid-aughts?
Sure. Well, you want to talk about why it's popular for the community, and I'll talk about why so many got built and how that may have potentially been the downfall.
Yes. Do you want to? Where should we start?
Go first?
I guess I'll start, and then we'll talk about how many were actually built. Okay. So we're talking about and understanding why malls were successful and important pieces of like community in suburbia. There's a lot that goes into it, but to the point of like rapid commercialism and rapid consumerism, the new middle class post World War II had money and needed somewhere to spend it. We've already talked about this. They also needed somewhere that had the goods to buy. Okay. So typically you would live in a city and you'd buy your goods at the department store in the city, but now you're moving out to the suburbs and you've got like a mom and pop store, you got a diner, you got a gas station. And like, obviously there's more there, but like if you're looking for furniture or, you know, dresses that are more than your handmade dresses, like where could you buy those things? Well, you would get those things at the shopping mall now. So America, as we all know, is massive. And that made distribution and access to goods difficult during the time when production and consumer spending was increasing rapidly and in tandem with one another. So malls had every single shop you could imagine, and they had department stores, which you only used to have in cities. So malls and their stores offered local access to national and sometimes international products and trends that might have otherwise been unavailable to like your average middle American or like suburban American. The Atlantic says, quote, "It may seem odious to call consumerism a kind of cosmopolitanism, but like it or not, after the middle class rose from the soot of industrialism, the spread of ideas became attached to goods." And then his name is Ian Bogost, who is the author of the Atlantic article. He goes on to share an example of a friend that he had who bought his first copy of a Heidegger novel, Being in Time, in an Iowa mall in a Walden bookstore with money from a summer job. And then this friend goes on to become a philosopher. And like the first time that this friend came in contact with philosophy was because he bought a book at a mall in a Walden bookstore.
I remember.
And we all have experiences like that. Like I just talked about how like I was introduced to like punk culture at my mall. Like I'm not in like the punk subculture right now, but punk music was extremely formative to me and, you know, changed a lot of things in my life. And I think, would I have known about these things if I hadn't gone and seen kids with like studded belts and like mohawks and gauged ears and all this stuff? Like, who knows?
Maybe. My mall experience was a little different. I saw those I went to like a really big public school, so I saw those things there, but we would go to like TGI Fridays to pretend it was our birthday to get free cake.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that horrible? We would do that like every week.
I mean, the kids there probably didn't care that were working.
The waiters, they weren't that, I guess, yeah, you're right. What's it to them?
They were like, I don't care. I just give them what they can.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, we have to factor in the difference between urban and suburban life. I kind of talked about this a little bit, but in the 80s and 90s, malls weren't just for shopping. They were a place of community and society. So 80s and 90s were, quote, the heyday of the mall as a culture symbol and a commercial powerhouse. In those days, mall going really did offer some of the social benefits Gruen had imagined. The American suburbs lacked a density of daily encounters that characterizes the modernist cities of Europe, and the mall provided a space where people could amble in thick proximity. End quote.
And people like new moms who were on maternity leave or old people would go, they still do that, like do laps around malls.
Yeah.
It's like a place to meet up and be like indoor and be able to, you know, have interesting things to look at.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a little like the more bad side of the mall expansion and why it blew up so much. So in the 50s, after Gruen had, designed his mall, the U.S. passed a new depreciation law that basically said you can set aside some of your income tax-free to pay for the upkeep of your assets. And a building, like a gigantic building where a mall is a huge asset and costs a lot to upkeep. So without getting too many details, you basically made a ton of non-taxable return on capital from the depreciation of your building. So people just started building malls everywhere as like a quick way to get money. Investors would put up big buildings, take out as much money from them as they can, sell them 4 or 5 years later at a huge profit, and then build an even bigger building, make a bigger depreciation allowance, etc. But at this time, the malls then weren't being used to serve communities. They were just used to make rich people richer. They were going up wherever there was land. It didn't follow any logic. For example, between 1950 and 1970, the Scranton area shrunk by 73,000 people, but gained 31 shopping centers.
Bonks. Absolutely bonkers.
And then, Gruen intended Southdale, his first mall, to be a dense, self-contained downtown for the area. But then 15 minutes away, the largest mall in the U.S., the Mall of America, opened up. So, yeah. Didn't really work. And then, do you want to talk about like the big, how that kind of led to like Walmart and were you going to talk about that?
I was not going to talk about that, really.
Well, okay. Well, this like growth of malls kind of led to standalone retailers like Walmart and Target, and then like strip malls, which had 3 or 4 big stores like Staples, Barnes & Nobles, Best Buy. They started popping up everywhere. Mm-hmm. And there were so many of them.
So much shopping, so much retail. All thanks to the invention of the mall, but mostly thanks to the U.S. government for essentially creating some really great tax breaks for developers. Mm-hmm. And that like kind of deflated and defeated the purpose like Gruen had for the American mall, or the vision he had for what a mall could do for a community. Not to say that like malls still didn't offer some form of community in society. But when you have people just like land grabbing and like just building things willy-nilly with literally, like you said, no logic, then it's kind of like it becomes oversaturated, mm-hmm. And it just basically becomes about making money rather than making community.
Yeah. Yeah. But agreed. It wasn't all against his vision. Like, especially in the 80s and 90s, shopping malls were a huge part of American culture.
Yes, for sure. So that basically leads me into, if malls were so important and so popular and integral to suburban community, why did they stop getting built? Because they did stop getting built.
Since 2006.
Yes.
No new mall has been built.
Which is bonkers to me. Anyway, so go ahead.
Wait, before we go into that, can I talk about Gruen and how he kind of feels, like wrap up with Gruen and how he felt about his Frankenstein, basically?
Yes.
So I'm going to, this is a quote from the New Yorker article about the many European immigrants that came to America during World War II / refugees. Quote, they had fled a place of chaos and anxiety, and in American consumer culture, they sought a bulwark against the madness across the ocean. They wanted to find in the jumble of American marketplace something as grand as the Vienna they had lost, the place where the unconscious was meticulously dissected by Dr. Freud, who also came to the U.S. at the same time as Gruen, and where shrines to European civilization, to the Gothic, the Baroque, the Renaissance, and the ancient Greek traditions were erected on the Ringstrasse. But it was, in the end, too good to be true. This wasn't the way America worked at all. So Gruen ended up hating what became of malls. He said that malls had been ruined by developers who only wanted profit, that they had been disfigured by, quote, the ugliness and discomfort of the land-wasting seas of parking. And he eventually returned to Vienna, where he fixed up a country house outside the city. But lo and behold, just south of the city was a new, gigantic shopping mall. It was putting local shopkeepers out of business and ruining everything the city had been redesigned to create. The New Yorker says, quote, he was devastated. Victor Gruen invented the shopping mall in order to make America more like Vienna, and he ended up making Vienna more like America, which makes me sad.
It does make me sad, too. Just to reiterate again, please read that Malcolm Gladwell article in the New Yorker, because there's a lot in there, too, that I'm not going to talk about it, and I don't think Grace is going to talk about it either, but Gruen invented the mall, but there was a man that came after Gruen who essentially, like, quote, perfected the mall. And to get they get into the psychology of why certain things are chosen for the design of a mall, down from the lighting to the skylights to the tile on the floor to whether or not the banisters on the second floor should have see-through handles or not. Like, things that I never thought about. And now I feel like a fucking mall expert after reading that goddamn article. So lots in there. Check it out. But let's talk about why malls stopped getting built. I got a lot of this information in particular from the Times article titled Why the Death of Malls is About More Than Shopping by Josh Sanborn. And this was published in 2017, so some of the numbers may be a little bit outdated, but nevertheless, Sanborn says that the decline of the mall began in the mid-2000s, so like around 2006. This coincided with the rise of online shopping and the recession of 2008, all leading to the drop of both in-person sales and foot traffic at malls, therefore also declining in-person shopping and foot traffic at retailers like JCPenney's and Macy's, which were the anchors of many U.S. malls. So we may or may not have mentioned it to this point because, you know, we're trying our best here to like combine our topics and our research live on air. But one of the main aspects of the Gruen design and like shopping centers and shopping malls in general is that like the shopping mall has what they call anchors. So these anchors are big box retailers or big box department stores. And those are the basically the retailers that sit on either end of the mall. And then all of the tiny retailers kind of fill in the space in between. And those anchors are what essentially like financially keep the mall, quote, alive, and pay the big bucks to the owners of the mall to like their rent, essentially. So that means like in the early 2000s when foot traffic at malls was going down and therefore foot traffic and sales was going down at like the department stores that anchored the malls, like what does that mean for malls? Here's a fun stat. Between 2010 and 2013, mall visits during the holiday season, the busiest shopping time of the year, dropped by 50%. So like people were not going to malls anymore. This is called the, quote, Great Mall Die-Off. It's also referred to as market correction by economists. So market correction, as far as I understand, breaks down to like the American populace being way over retailed and the market therefore needing to correct itself. So what do I mean by over retailed? Grace was already talking about how many malls are getting built, like illogically, like seemingly with no purpose other than to like make their owners money. But here's some fun stats. There is an estimated, as of 2017, 26 square foot of retail for every person in the United States. This is compared to 2.5 square feet per capita in Europe.
Wow.
Roughly 60% of Macy's stores slated to close are within 10 miles of another Macy's store as of 2017. For what? And then, of course, there's the reality that many Americans no longer see the need to go to any Macy's store at all, regardless of how close or how many there are within a 10-mile radius. A quote from that Times article, quote, "Our daily lives are frictionless and ruthlessly efficient, with retail and romance available at a click. Malls are designed for leisure, abundance, ambling. You parked and planned to spend some time there. Today, much of that time has been given over to busier lives and second jobs and apps that let you swipe right instead of haunt the food court. Malls," said Harvard business professor Leonard Schlesinger, "were, quote, built for patterns of social interaction that increasingly don't exist." And I feel like that holds up to a point. I feel like consumerism on a whole has kind of shifted into something a little bit different. It's not just about the ease of like online shopping. I feel like especially with like the rise of Instagram and like TikTok and like influencer marketing, we're seeing like kind of a shift into like luxury purchasing or like we're kind of shifting back to like small business appreciation. I know that, yes, I still shop
only in
at
our bubble though.
True. I mean, like I still obviously shop at Target and I shop at Amazon sometimes. Like it is what it is. But like I also find that shopping for me isn't just about the ease of shopping. And yes, I also think that it comes down to like the privilege of living in a city. When we don't have to, we're able to like pick between any one of 5 specialty cafes rather than like going to a mall and like buying Annie Ann's pretzels. But yeah.
But I do feel like, I don't know. I mean, I used to love going shopping. Now I almost never do. Like, I feel like there's a time where that was like the only thing to do on the weekend. And I feel like sometimes in certain like suburbs that it's just like enticing you to come spend money.
Right.
Which it's like, yes, it is good to get out there and interact with people, not necessarily do everything online. Of course, Amazon is like horrible for the environment and it's better to like shop locally if you can. But if you go to a mall and it's all chain stores anyway.
I found that like, I also don't like shopping in person. If I'm going to shop in person, I want it to be for the experience of it.
Yeah.
You could not twist my arm.
Shopping.
Exactly. You could not twist my arm to go into like an H&M. Anyway, whereas like going into an H&M when I was in college was like the fun thing to do.
Yeah.
I could never do that anymore.
Is that society changing or is that just us? Like, is that just
I think about like,
up? I don't know.
The idea of like going thrifting is engaging to me.
Mm-hmm.
What's not engaging is going to the mall for Annie Ann's, right?
Yeah.
But I would plan like a cafe date with a friend or a boba tea date with a friend or a ramen date with a friend. Like, but that's about like the experience of going to this specialty thing that's like feels like crafted and, you know, intentional. Whereas I feel like sometimes malls don't have that intention of craftsmanship.
That is our privilege of where we live.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. So another interesting statistic from the Times article talks about the, quote, local jobs casualty connected to the death of malls. This is referred to by analysts as retail apocalypse. Remember that this article is from 2017. Nevertheless, the numbers are interesting. Quote, since 2002, department stores have lost 448,000 jobs, a 25% decline, while the number of store closures this year is on a pace to surpass the worst depths of the Great Recession. The growth of online retailers, meanwhile, have failed to offset those losses, with the e-commerce sector adding just 178,000 jobs over the past 15 years. Some of those jobs can be found in like the massive distribution centers Amazon has opened across the country, often not too far from malls the company helped to shutter, end quote. So like, because of online shopping, tons of people are losing their jobs, but there is no job growth also, or there's like not as much job growth for the job loss that we're seeing from department stores, which I thought was interesting. And that brings me to dead malls and I'm going to talk a little bit more about like how malls decline, but feel free to break in at any point.
No, I think that's a good segue.
Okay. So in the State of the American Mall on New York Times by Sapna Mashawari, we learned that of the 1,000 malls still around the United States, there are about 750 vacant anchor boxes. These are vast spaces that once housed like those big department store chains, Sears, Nordstrom's, Macy's. Also, many small tenants have clauses in their leases that allow them to pay reduced rent or even leave if 2 or more anchor stores depart from the mall, which can further exacerbate a mall's vacancy issues. So, if a mall loses their anchor stores, in the leases that the smaller retailers have, if the anchor stores leave, they either pay reduced rent or they can also leave. So like the mall is basically like completely screwed if they lose the major retailers, which is crazy.
Which they are, because Macy's like closed down all of its stores, I think.
Exactly.
Almost all.
I also just saw in my email the other day that Payless is filing for bankruptcy or closing everything. And it's like, Payless is like a staple for every single mall that I ever went to in my entire life. So then, okay, the recession of 2008 hit retailers hard, with more than 400 bankruptcies at mall mainstays like Sharper Image, Linens and Things, Steve & Barry's, and KB Toys, leaving even more vacancies. And then you talked about these big box stores like Walmart and Target and Best Buy kind of siphoning off customers as well. And any of these vacancies, especially the big box department stores, are hard to fill normally, but especially so during the pandemic. Economists believe that the coronavirus-related shutdowns are accelerating the existing trends of favoring online shopping. And customers are turning more to like retail giants like Amazon, as well as smaller e-commerce stores for groceries, cleaning, and personal hygiene products. And it's led economists to predict that the next 3 to 5 years, as many as 1/4 of the 1,000 malls in the United States could close forever, adding hundreds to the list of the already dead malls across the countries. And then I have some interesting facts about how people are repurposing malls, but I didn't know if you wanted to talk about those, but I can talk a little bit more about dead malls before we get into that.
I think talk more about dead malls.
Okay, so do you know what a dead mall is, other than like a mall that has gone out of business?
Yeah, an empty mall.
Essentially an empty mall, but not just an empty mall, like it's just sitting there. A dead mall is an internet sensation right now. So a dead mall can also be called a ghost mall, a zombie mall, or an abandoned mall. And there is a ravenous community online that is obsessed with the imagery and the aesthetic of a dead mall.
I've watched the YouTube videos of people like going into them and exploring. Sometimes there's people living in there.
Yep, for sure. You can go online and just type dead malls, and there's like archives or like comprehensive lists of all the dead malls in America that you can like go and visit. I went on one of these lists and I found like a mall that I went to as a kid was shuttered in like 2014. It is now considered a dead mall. And I was like, oh shit.
Is there one close by? Can we go? Road trip?
Yes. Well, there's one in Illinois for sure. I'm not sure how close because, Illinois is pretty big, but we should be
hours away.
I know. We'll break in. We'll bring a camera. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay. So dead malls, quote, stand frozen in time as nostalgic monuments to their formative years. Millions of now middle-aged Americans spent evenings and weekends strolling the mall's vast corridors with their friends, stopping at Cinnabon for a sweet treat, and scoping out the latest styles at Gap or Abercrombie & Fitch. For younger generations, these dead malls may simply be vast, abandoned suburban playgrounds to explore and photograph. If you're interested in learning more about dead malls, I'll include a link into the episode description. I found a comprehensive guide to abandoned malls in 2021. I'll include that. And then I'll also include the photo series from the Huffington Post photojournalist Seph Lawless, a haunting look inside America's creepiest abandoned malls. The photos are so cool. We did a great job. And that's basically all I have for dead malls. But from the videos I've seen on TikTok or YouTube, like, it's really eerie to like look at this thing that was so important to my childhood, and they're just like dilapidated, and it's like kind of like very ghostly and eerie, but there's like an aesthetic to it of like crumbling and decaying suburbia, like mannequins just left on the floor, and like grates from stores pulled down, and dead plants and caution tape and broken
fountains with no water.
Exactly.
Well, I think the Atlantic article did a good job talking about like the good things about malls compared to like, even though it is very, consumerism driven, it's at least more contained versus now it's like you could literally buy anything off your phone, like with the click, and you don't even have to go to a different store, but in a mall, it's like you're there, it's around you, like you have to go to different stores for different things, but then you leave. And it's not, you're not shopping anymore. Now it's like you're constantly, it's easy to buy stuff. And you're also like very specifically being advertised things that you should buy. So it's like, I saw malls as this like super capitalistic, consumerist, suburban thing. But it almost like, that's before doing this topic. And now I'm like, well, I feel like what's going on now is a little more insidious as far as like being, even though now you are able to be connected with smaller
businesses worldwide, but like,
but
no,
you don't
totally
have that
agree.
like community and that like intentional. But I also think malls also allow for a lot of like shopping just to shop.
Yes, that's true.
Like that's the activity, not like intentionally like I need this.
It's complicated. I think you're right though. Like, the Atlantic article uses the comparison of like a casino. Like a casino is this contained thing within four walls. You go in, you gamble, and then you leave. obviously there's other ways to gamble outside of a casino, but like you can understand what we're talking about. It's not like gambling is not this insidious thing that like you're doing constantly on your phone. Like every single American is doing this constant thing on their phone. We are doing that now with shopping. Like your phone is not just a phone. Your phone is a storefront. Instagram is transitioning to a storefront. I don't know if anybody else knows this, but that's a fact. That's what they're planning. Your wallet is on your phone. You know, like you can buy things with your face, like just sitting on your couch. Like they're listening to you. They're constantly sending you advertisements right on your Instagram feed, right on your TikTok feed. You can't escape it. Whereas like a mall is a place for shopping that, you know, I wouldn't be able to, you know, like when I was 13, I couldn't just be like, Mom, I need new jeans. And she, with one click, buy me jeans off of Amazon and it gets there the next day. You have to wait till the weekend and try them on and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like a whole thing. So were we buying less and spending less when there were malls than we are now?
I don't know. I feel like I shop less now, but maybe that's not necessarily true. I mean, who knows?
We don't know. These are just raising questions.
This is just us talking. I mean, this is just us bullshitting. But do you want to talk about repurposing malls? I have an example. So Gruen vision of like a mall being community center, you know, may still have a chance even though malls are closing down. So in 2005, Jose Legaspi bought a dying mall and he turned it into Plaza Fiesta, which was designed specifically to meet the needs of the growing Hispanic population outside of Atlanta. He said, quote, "The extended family concept is very, very key to the culture of the Hispanic community. There is not a place where the families could gather, and shopping doesn't just mean shoes and clothing or eating at a restaurant. It's also a place where they can listen to music, sit down, relax, and spend some time with the family." So Plaza Fiesta has 280 stores, but it also has doctor's offices, a dentist, hairdressers, money wiring services, everything you might find in a Mexican village. And there's live music on Sundays. There's a bus station that brings customers in. And it was working. I mean, as of 2005, the mall had more than 4 million visitors in the last year. So it was serving that community.
And like I found in my research that economists are hopeful that malls can be revitalized, but there's a very specific way to approach the revitalization of malls. And it's to kind of, honestly, to bring it back to the original Gruen concept of like making it more about a community center, but also it's not just about making it like a community center, but it's also like elevating the concept. So it's not like just your chain stores. It's more bringing more local or like more independent sellers in, having higher end food options or like more unique food options, you know, like malls in our day had like a McDonald's, a Salad Works, and a Cinnabon. And now
Johnny
like,
Rockets.
Right. The malls that are working now have like sushi and burritos and crepes and, you know, like a cupcake vending machine, like things like that make the experience at the mall an experience. It's not just about shopping. You're seeing malls, the successful malls nowadays also have like light shows, concerts, go-karts, go-karting, rope courses, bowling alleys, like all types of stuff are happening at malls rather than just shopping. And there's stores obviously interspersed, but you want it to be a place where people can go to hang out. And people aren't just going to hang out to shop anymore because you can shop from your couch. Why would you go to a store to shop when you can do it right from your couch? So to get people at the mall to shop, you have to have other things there. And those are the malls that are successful. And if I'm remembering correctly, it's like there's like 150 malls right now in the United States that are doing that. And everybody else is like not, because it costs a lot of money to renovate a mall.
Yeah. Well, I know in Memphis where my parents live, there's it wasn't a mall, it was a Sears distribution center, and it was like completely run down, graffitied, dilapidated. They rebuilt it, put a lot of money into it, but now it's like a community space. It's huge. There's apartments there, there's a high school there, there's cooking classes, like community outreach, and then it's filled with like local restaurants and local stores. There's only local businesses there selling stuff. And there's like a brewery and an outdoor space where they have farmers markets. And it's, you know, it's a great community area now. People can go. And I think if you live someplace where you have to drive everywhere, the idea that you could park your car and like walk around, you know, one area is so human.
It is. And
I think that's what I meant. Experience.
I think that's what I meant earlier too. Like the experience that we have as consumers now is not just about the act of shopping. Mm-hmm. Like when we were in high school or, middle school and like we would go to the mall, we didn't obviously have money to shop necessarily, but like people went to the mall to shop and to buy their goods and then they left. Mm-hmm. And now I feel like it's more, like I said, back to that, the original concept of community. Like, yeah, we'll go to shop and support local artisans, support local businesses, try the brewery, meet friends, see the local, I don't know, Grateful Dead band play. Exactly. Yeah. I also saw that dead malls or dead Superbox stores or whatever are being turned into like vaccination sites for COVID, or office buildings, or like I also saw high schools were being put into dead malls as well.
That would be cool.
Could you imagine? That would if we were kids now, it'd be over for you idiots.
It really would. God would never give us the chance.
No. This was like one of the more fun topics I've researched in a while. I feel like I learned really interesting, so much.
And I feel like it changed my views a lot on suburbia and malls in general.
It makes me miss a mall. I went to a mall maybe like 5-6 years ago in Illinois, like one of the ones right out in the suburbs, to like buy a bathing suit or something. Because I was like, I need to try it on. I can't just buy this online, which my mind has changed since then. Mm-hmm. I went to like an Old Navy or something in a mall, and it was like the worst experience of my life because I'm like, oh my God, I don't know who comes to these places. And like everything's closed except the Old Navy. And I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
I get tired now. Like I can't shop for that long.
I also saw, it's funny you say that. I saw that in one of the articles, maybe it was The Atlantic, they talk about the recycled air that's inside the malls, the same air the way that they funnel air in casinos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the person called it like mall head. Like you have like this like kind of like, oh, I get tired after a while.
We should go to Mall of America if we want the big mall experience.
Oh, I found, hold on, let me see if I have the statistic about the Mall of America. Hold the phone. I essentially found a statistic about how even one of the most popular malls in America, the one that is like doing it right, the Mall of America, the pandemic is like essentially, they haven't been able to pay their rent for like 2 months or something because the mall is so big and, foot traffic is so small now because of COVID and whatever and the change of consumerism that even the Mall of America is struggling. So
yeah, and they have like a whole, amusement park in there.
They got a chapel. You can get married there if you really wanted to.
Don't tempt me. Well, I was going to end with this quote from The Atlantic. Not that this has to be the end, but...
Please. No. End it.
Quote, I can't help but think that the Americans' days of hating the mall are numbered. When it gets replaced by Apple Town Squares, Walmart Supercenters, and the online-offline slurry of an ever-rising Amazon, we will miss these zoos of capitalism, these prisons of commerce, where consumerism roared and swelled, but inevitably remained contained.
And that's that, folks. That's a mall.
That is that.
We should go to a mall.
We should. I do like the idea, though, of, the original version of it, where it's not just about shopping and spending money at, like, big chain stores.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I think that society needs that. It's not normal to be so isolated from everyone.
Right.
I mean, not that it's not normal, but I think a lot of people could benefit from feeling more part of a community.
Yes. And also like variants of like where you're shopping. Mm-hmm. Just because you can get everything on Amazon doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. No, you definitely shouldn't.
No. Anyway.
Well, that's that, everyone.
That's that on malls. And what a lucky day for listeners who are with us today to experience a same topic.
Double topic.
A double.
Same topic.
Same topic. Single topic.
A single topic.
2 girls,
episode.
1 topic.
There you go. Hope you enjoyed. I feel like we did pretty smooth.
I think that was okay.
Yeah.
We struggled worse, I think. The first time we did it was like the apocalypse, the 4 horsemen.
Yeah.
We were sweating. We were in the we were in the voiceover booth by ourselves, sitting next to each other, sweating, trying to figure out how to swap back and forth.
Like, and trying to do it because we used to record before work, trying to do it before we had to, before 9.
Before people started shuffling in for the day and you could hear them talking and like banging in the kitchen. Yeah. Those are the days. Crazy days.
Wild. So yeah, I guess, I mean, talk about being isolated now. We don't even go into an office anymore.
Nope. I don't want to. It's okay.
No, yeah, I don't want to do that either. But yeah, I mean, but I feel like we see people all the time.
Yeah. I see you every Thursday. What else
do I need? I'm walking around this dang neighborhood every day, running my little errands.
I walk from my front door to my back door. I got a dog. That's all I need.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening.
As always.
You can talk to us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at The Good Evening Girls. We'll post some fun photos of dead malls and some Victor Gruen storefronts, potentially. Come on over.
If you're lucky. And we're on TikTok at The Good Eve Girls.
Yes, we are. And until next time, make sure you keep curious out there. Write to us with any curiosities that you may or may not have.
Let us know if you go to a mall.
Yep. Let us know if you've never been to a mall. And that's it.
Yeah, those are only 2 things we want to talk about. So,
Yep.
I guess we'll see y'all next week.
Yep. Same place, same time. Bye.
Bye.